Let's get started making this festive New Year's card. What I've done here to begin with is got a sheet of regular artist quality watercolor paper. This is Hahnemuhle paper. And I cut out a 7 by 10 piece of paper, and I made sure that I had the edge, the deckled edge, on the lengthwise part, so it would be on the vertical and it would be on the bottom if we did a card turned horizontal. So again, it was 10 long and 7 wide, and then I folded it exactly in half and bent it back and forth several times to get that rather loose and bendy, so it would be like a card and lay somewhat flat. Now the reason I didn't take it from a kit, a card kit like you can get in your art stores, is because I don't like the paper that these come in. And I have never really looked, so I'm not sure if you can get a higher, more professional quality paper in a kit like this, but I chose to make my own because I'm familiar with this paper. And did I say that already? It's Hahnemuhle. Yes, Hahnemuhle, 140 pound, and that way it's not too stiff and it fits into an envelope, a 5 by 7 envelope, rather easily. So that's why I didn't use this. I've had this sitting around my studio for years and years, and I used it maybe once or twice, and I just don't like the paper. It doesn't seem to be as bright when the paint dries, and it kind of tends to buckle and puddle and just all kinds of things that aren't very fun to deal with. So I want to have fun. So first thing I'm going to do is get some circles drawn on here, because what I'm going to do is a New Year's globe, you know, so dropping the ball on New Year's Eve when it clock strikes midnight, the ball drops. So this is going to be that mirrored ball, and we're going to attempt to paint this. So what I have here is just some items that I've had around the house and the studio. I mean, chapstick, come on, I won't use this probably so much in this, but it's an item that you could use to draw circles. So you could use the inside of a tape and the outside to make a bigger circle. You could use a smaller tape, a little hairspray bottle for some smaller globes if you wanted to. This is an overcap from a vitamin supplement I take. But today I'm not going to use those. I discovered that I've had also sitting around in my studio, and I had forgotten about it until I was cleaning things up, and I realized I have this Circle Master. So this is really cool because it has so many different sizes, and you don't have to search around your house looking for the right size circle. So for this, I think I'm going to go with this 2.5 inch. I think that's a 2.5 inch diameter, and we're going to do the bigger globe. I'm going to do 3 globes, so I'll do one, kind of a little offset it from the center and down a bit from the top edge of my paper, and I'm just going to draw a circle around, and there's my first globe. So then I'm going to go ahead and pick a smaller one, maybe this size here, a 1/2 inch smaller, and I'm going to layer this. So this is going to go, I'm going to start my line at the beginning or at the line of the other circle and come around and stop right there, and that'll give us the layered look. Then for my third circle, I'm going to come down and maybe go even to a 1.5 inch, about right there, how about? And same thing, I want it to look like it's behind that first circle. So I've got 3, And I think I'm going to stick with the 3. Go with it. A little odd number. And I'll talk about our plastic wrap here in just a second, but I'm going to get this taped down. So I want to tape it down, 1, to keep it from moving while I paint, and also I can tip my board and move it around a bit, and also because it might tend to buckle a little bit, so taping it down is going to help that. And I'm going to come in just a little bit, like probably 1/4 of an inch. Oh, another thing to think about, a reason behind using the professional quality watercolor paper when I'm doing a little project like this is that when I send it to people, it's a little watercolor painting, so they likely will want to frame it, and I want this to be a high quality watercolor painting. So on this paper, it's not going to yellow, it's not going to fade, it's 100% acid free, where some of those card packets are not. They're not made to stand up to that test of time. So hopefully I've got those lines somewhat straight. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, because we've got a mirrored globe, something like this. You have the lines that we want to create on our globes here. So the top of this is going to, let's just start it right here and kind of arch it. It's going to be our first line. And then the other side lines are going to kind of come from somewhat of a center point in this top area. Kind of get wider through here, and then they narrow out as they come around, and it gives that illusion of a globe. So just keep on bringing those, and then I'm going to come up here and just continue, and also bring those lines. Might help if I put that down. Bring these down, just like that. Easy peasy. And it really, I mean, if you're not exact, don't worry about it. I tend to be a little bit OCD about getting things exactly right, but in the end, it's not going to matter one way or the other. So here I'm going to do the same thing. Just did it in a little different order. They're not exactly the same width, it's not going to matter. And come down from that center point. And I probably won't detail the ones that are behind as much as the one that's in front. Keep things interesting. And as I'm erasing, I want to mention I don't like erasing, because it can mess with the sizing, the surface of your paper. But a little bit here and there isn't going to hurt anything tonight on this. So these globes, maybe they have a string hanging down. And then this one is going to be hidden, but we can do an imaginary one there, or draw an imaginary line down. Okay, so we've got our 3 globes, and it's all taped down and ready to go. Now for the plastic wrap. This is something that I've known about, but I haven't really utilized it too much. But it's something that I just started playing around with again for background painting. And what I'm going to do is manipulate this plastic wrap to give me a rather linear, if I can get that off of my finger. So like this is cling wrap. This stuff works really good. It's from Kirkland. Anyway, so when I put it down, I'm going to manipulate it, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. You can crinkle this up and get some geometric and interesting different shapes, but for this project, I want to kind of have some linear lines to that. So now we're ready to apply some paint. I'm just going to get my paints mixed up, and then we'll get started. The paints that I'm using for the most part are pretty granulating colors. I've got some Primatech or Permatech. I can't decide how to pronounce that, but it's a Daniel Smith line that are very granulating colors. And then I've also got some glitter, some iridescent medium in here, and a couple of colors by Holbein, Antique Silver and Antique Gold, and they have a nice shimmer to them. Now, some of the pigments from Daniel Smith on the Primatech line do have some glimmer in them too. I'm using some Amethyst Genuine, some Bronzite Genuine, and some of their other colors as well. But the Amethyst and the Bronzite both have really cool shimmer to them. So I want this to be festive and shimmery, so that's what we're going for. I'm going to start by just kind of spritzing a little bit of spray. Now I do want some areas of the globes to stay white, so I'm avoiding spraying that into the globe completely. So with my Versatile Escoda, I'm just gonna get my paper wet. What I'm going for is the paper and paint to be wet when I put that plastic wrap down. And what's going to happen with that is the paint will dry lighter where the plastic wrap is lifted off the paper, basically. So you'll see what I'm saying in just a second here. So let's take a look in the light and see. I've left some areas of just drier paper, and I'll come in and soften that as I go. So that's pretty nice and wet. And I'm just going to start by dropping in some color. And I know that these two colors, this is Opera Rose by Winsor and Newton, and Quinacridone Gold by Holbein. So I'm just going to drop those in. I know also that I want a little darker areas down in this bottom part, so I'm going to add some darker colors. My thinking is I want to add some text down here after we've completed this painting. So also I have some not ultramarine, it's Phthalo turquoise, which is beautiful. I've got it mixed in with some shimmer in here, so I'm going to add that down here just straight from my palette, and then I'll put some shimmer in as well. And I do want to soften this before it dries, and I want to be really aware of where I am in that drying stage, because I don't want this to, that's going to be green, I don't want this to dry out before I put my plastic wrap on it. I don't know if you can see that, but that shimmer is stunning. So I'm going to add a little thicker of that amethyst. And this is Pimonite. That's one of the granulating Primatech colors. think I want a little bit thicker on the opera rose here. Just get that going. This is rhodonite. It's close to opera rose, but it's a little bit more muted, not quite so bright. I'm going to add some antique gold. I think I want a little, soak up a little bit of that, just with a paper towel. It's getting a little watery. I do want it watery, but I don't want it a puddle. I'm forgetting about my Bronzite over here, so let me add a little of that. And this is why taping it down, so I can just move this board around a lot. I'm really liking how this looks over here. So I think I'll go with a little bit more of that. Now I do want to remember to soften this, so let's come back over here, leave some little sparkle. But I'm going to pull some of that color into my ball. And then I've got this antique silver here. I think I'll drop a little of that in. And I'm rinsing my brush in between colors so I can keep my colors nice and bright. Soak up a little bit more of that. Okay, so I'm in danger of this being a little bit too dry, so I'm going to set my paints aside and manipulate my plastic to actually a little bit more gold. I want that to come in. Can also add it later, but I like adding it into this initial wash so it can move around a little bit. Okay. Now we're going to put the plastic wrap over the top of this. And before I set it flat down, I'm going to crinkle it a little bit lengthwise. Like I said, to get a more linear look. And you can already see where it's flat on the paper, the paint is sticking down. Basically, the cling wrap is sucking it to the paper. But where the lines are, this is where we're going to see lines when our paint is dry. And I kind of imagine that as like streamers. Let's get that a little bit more. Okay. All right. I can't wait to see how this looks when we take that plastic wrap back up. So gotta let it dry, and then we'll come back and take that up and see what the next step's gonna be. This had a chance to dry, and it actually dried overnight, so I can still see some buckling on here, but I wanted to bring you into this fun little part of it, which is, it's almost like popping bubble wrap. It's peeling that plastic wrap away and just seeing what happened underneath. So let's go ahead and do that. Maybe I'll bring it up a little bit and just bring up our plastic wrap for the great reveal. And look at how cool the granulation is, and how awesome are these little light areas that was created from that plastic wrap. So now what I want to do is, this is still cool to my touch, and I can feel with the back of my hand, not the front, this isn't as accurate, the back of my hand, I can feel that it's still cool. So at this point I am comfortable drying it. If it were still wet and the paint was still settling into the grooves, the valleys of the paper, I wouldn't want to dry it and mess with that process, because that is how we get these very cool textures. So I always let my paint dry to a certain point where I'm sure that all that settling has been done, and then I can go ahead and pull out my hair dryer, which is what I'm going to do right now. And then we'll add another layer to this and continue on with this fun little festive painting.